The January 2017 meeting of the City of the Scranton Zoning Hearing Board will now come to order. Will the secretary please take roll?
Mr. Gaddens?
Here.
Mr. O'Neill?
Here.
Ms. Newcomb?
Here.
Mr. Paul Matessa?
Here.
Chairman Walsh?
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In accordance with the Pennsylvania State Sunshine Law, this board shall render its decision on each case either at the end of each hearing or within 45 days of the hearing. If you are to give testimony in a case, please come to the podium, raise your right hand, and wait to be sworn in. After being sworn in, state your name and address and proceed with your testimony. Also, anyone giving testimony who does not become a party to the case may obtain a written decision from the zoning office. I also have two announcements of law. If you are granted a variance or a special exception, you must wait 30 days from the date of our decision to obtain the necessary permits to start work. However, you may obtain a permit sooner by signing a waiver that any work done during that 30-day period is at your own risk. A favorable decision by this board shall expire 12 months from the date of said authorization, in accordance with Section 111I of the zoning ordinance. If you fail to obtain the necessary permits or do not comply with any or all conditions of said authorization, you must seek an extension. Is there any remarks? Dan, at this point, do we have Jack?
Since this is the January meeting, this is usually the reorganization meeting.
Okay. I would like to nominate Mr. O'Neill for the chairman position.
Second.
Any other nominations? Nominations closed.
Well,
Let's vote for chairman first.
Mr. Gaddens?
Oh, sorry, I was going to actually nominate Gaddens, but that's fine.
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
yes.
Ms. Newcomb?
I'm going to vote yes, but normally I would vote no because he's chairperson last year and this year and this 3 years in a row, so that was my say.
So noted. Mr. Paul Matessa?
He's not a true member of the board,
Right.
so.
Understood.
Right.
Chairman Walsh?
Yes. Vote of 4-0.
Thank you, and I'd like to nominate Mr. Gaddens for vice chair.
I'll second that.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Newcomb?
Yes.
Chairman Walsh?
Yes. Congratulations.
What difference does it make? How about if we do it after tonight?
Well, you're supposed to
I just don't want to keep getting up.
Huh?
I don't want to keep getting up.
I'd like to call the first case.
I swear.
Oh, okay. Jack, everything was put on the...
I, Jack Swinney, zoning officer for the city of Scranton, do solemnly swear that I have posted the following properties with the notice of zoning hearing. Item number 1, Joyce Outdoor Advertising in reference to 1929 North Main Avenue. Number 2, Valerie Miller Bean, 436 Cedar Avenue. Number 3, 902 South Webster Avenue. Number 4, 2116 Pittston Avenue. Item number 5 has been withdrawn. The properties were posted on January 9th of this year.
Okay, I'd like to call the first case.
Joyce Outdoor Advertising in reference to 1929 North Main Avenue.
Want to raise your hand, sir? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And state your name and address, please.
Kevin Joyce, Joyce.
Thank you.
Can I pass these out?
You proceed.
Okay. I'm requesting relief today from the city zoning ordinance 712, section 1B. My company wishes to install a 23-foot high by 13-foot wide vinyl wall sign at 1929 North Main Ave, also known as Pierce Pizza. In effect, the sign would be replacing a faded, painted old mural wall sign, to which the dates, I don't know when that was painted there, but it would in effect be covering up that space. The property is zoned in a CN zone, and the ordinance states that billboards are allowed within CN zones as long as they're within 150 feet of Interstate 81 or the Scranton Central Expressway. So this is a CN zone where we're trying to put a sign, a wall sign, on a state road, but it's not either of the interstates. For that, I'm looking for relief, and the sign would be illuminated, as you can see on the first page of the exhibit. It's roughly between Dixon City and North Scranton, just past East Market Street, and where the arrow is pointing, you can see the previous mural on the wall. And the second page depicts the height and the width of the sign, virtually replacing the painted mural once again. And on the third page, it's a dark photo, but it's a photo, not an aerial shot taken of it. And following that is a rendering of what we're proposing.
What was that a sign for before, the mural?
It was painted over a few times. If you look at it closely, and I asked around, but you really can't tell. At one time it was tobacco, and that's the only thing one person told me that they knew it was an old tobacco sign. Obviously they stopped using those quite some time ago. And the last page is an example of previous wall signs we've done in the city, and that's how it will be affixed and anchored to the wall.
Is that it, sir?
That's it, yeah. I know one person is here to challenge me, but I would take it standing into question, given the results of a previous zoning hearing meeting. But that's it. We're in effect replacing something that's been there and fading for quite some time, so I don't think it would change the characteristics of the building or anything like that. It might, in a sense, or in some opinions, clean it up. Obviously, the property owner would like to proceed with that, and that's the relief we're looking for.
What's the closest sign to it? What's the distance to the next sign?
I'm sorry?
What is the distance to the next sign in that area?
Two closest signs I have it right here. In the southwest direction at Dunkin' Donuts on North Main Ave, that's over 3,000 feet away. Okay. And in the other direction, the northeast at Toyota Scranton, which is 1.1 miles away, roughly 6,900 feet.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's...
Jack, you're allowed to paint your building whatever color, or are you allowed to paint a sign on your building?
A sign, you'd have to go through a permit process just like this.
Oh.
The sign, if you were to paint the building, no.
No, I know.
Yeah, the Scranton ordinance, you could paint signs on buildings, but you're not restricted by size like you are with billboards. So that's a loophole.
But if that was the case, could you just paint over exactly where that sign? That's my question.
We could try, but the bottom line is the advertisements would be off premise, and it's in the CN zone.
Okay.
So By the letter of the law, you can't.
Gotcha.
If that sign had been taken down a few years ago, or if there was an actual sign, not a painted sign, I've never done this, but if there was a sign there and a few years had passed, you have a certain amount of time to replace a sign.
That was my,
Yes,
where I was trying.
yeah, if there was a legal non-conforming status, but obviously this is older than most of the people in the room. So I can't speak to its origin or its anything like that.
Is there anyone else here to give testimony? Come on up. Oh, okay. Hold on one second. We still have another question.
It shows that you're going above the painted sign. You're not gonna go up to the roof line with this now, are you?
No, we're not going as high as the roof. We're going to go a few feet below that. Maybe 2 feet below the roof.
Right, 'cause it looks like there's some type of architectural work along the top of the building.
No, we're not going near the parapet or anything like that. We're just trying to stay high enough for the cars to park under it safely
Right.
if we ever have to do any maintenance or anything.
Okay.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, Chairman O'Neill.
Please state your name and address.
My name is Joe Gihuli. My address is 2247 Prospect Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania. Before we get started here, I also believe that this application is...
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Okay, so what are you testifying as? Like as you're opposing the sign, or?
I'm opposing the sign based on Mr. Lamar advertising in the last hearing was giving standing, since we were both in the same business.
Is he allowed to do that as a?
We allowed Lamar to testify at the last hearing.
Oh, he did, Lamar.
He wasn't.
Okay, and I would ask for that. I would ask for that same, permission.
No problem.
Okay. I believe that this is also in violation of 712.8 and the setbacks agreement, if Jack would open and read that. So we would actually need 2 variants as far as I'm concerned.
You said 712A, Joe?
712 number 8 under C and zones.
Specifically what, Joe?
The off-premise?
Yeah, you have to go back, you'd have to read 712.8, then you have to go to 2.2 under definitions.
Okay. 712A, purposes. Off-premise signs are controlled by this ordinance for the following purposes. To ensure that a physical environment is maintained.
I'm sorry, 712.8.
A,
as in the number 8.
Yeah,
what
part of A?
Why don't
A
you-
is a long thing.
of course. Why don't you take a look and read it in there?
I'm sorry, 712F.
Well, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, here we go. I'm sorry.
That's
why he's here.
in essence why we're here.
Okay. Yeah, it would be 712F1B. 712F1B.
Yeah, that's exactly why he's here. Because he does not fit into that definition, and therefore he's asking for a variance.
Correct.
Okay, so if you go to 2.2, though, that's called a residential section. You have to be 150 feet from a residential section, but I believe it says a residential line. If you go to 2.2...
Lot line, yeah.
If you go to 2.2.8, which we have to go way back.
There's no 2-2.
I'll show you.
Joe knows.
I'm sorry, but you know what? I've been sick, and unfortunately...
You're good, Joe, you're good.
2.2 residential lines.
What are we looking for, Joe?
We're looking for the residential line aspect of it. 2, yeah.
Lot lines? No. No.
Joe, could you tell them what it was in regards to, and then maybe they could find it?
Yeah, actually, it should take me only a second to find it here.
Take your time.
Residential lot lines. It would be
Chapter 2, page 22.
page 22, under residential lot lines. It's 250 feet. What it simply says in the zoning book is that you have to have it 250 feet away from a residential dwelling. It's in the zoning book. I have it under 22-1.
Without trying your case, it's 712F8A.
Right.
Which talks about setbacks. An off-premise sign has to be 250 feet from a residential lot line.
And the lot line is developed, lot line in the definitions of lot line, if you go to the
Correct.
definition, says you have to be 250 feet away. Now, there's a house directly across the street which can't be more than 50 feet away. So I would suggest he needs at least 2 variances.
So we need 712.
So basically, he's asking for variances from 712F1 and 712F8.
Correct.
Secondly, when we were here on November 9th, and I'm not going to get into that at all, several statements were made. In a CG, or general commercial zone, billboards are allowed. Okay, obviously we had a difference regarding spacing at that particular point. In a CN zone, and when we crafted the ordinance, and as I said, I was part of that at that time, the CN zone, we agreed to put, along with the planner, to put billboards in CN zones only along 81 and the expressway. All right, so that they're not in the middle of neighborhoods. All right, they're not in the middle of, the new area down on Cedar Avenue. Actually, this isn't far from that beautiful North Scranton, as you come down Market Street now, and North and Main, where they've done a lot of work. It's a half a mile away. I'm just saying, what I'm simply saying is, I'm going to read Mr. Joyce's comments from his last thing about proliferation and things like that.
From his last thing, what's his last thing? What are you referring to?
The last zoning hearing about proliferation and all the arguments he made. Because
this
the
is-
arguments he made are very relevant to this article.
Why don't you make your arguments?
Yeah, this is,
Why don't you make your arguments?
this is
The
this
argument
meeting.
is
This is-
simply this, okay? I don't believe there's been a hardship made here whatsoever, and I don't understand that. Secondly, that sign has been probably dilapidated over the last 20 years, at least. If there was a tobacco sign on it, you could go back to 30 years, when they banned tobacco from being on the side of a building. Here's a couple statements that Mr. Joyce made directly, which I find quite disturbing in the fact that he's here to suggest there won't be a proliferation of signs. Signs are already allowed in the CG district. If we're going to, and he calls it equal protection, which means, and I don't believe it, that if you grant this variance tonight, you got to grant everybody a variance that comes in for a C zone under the same circumstances. That's not true. You have to have a hardship. So therefore, this equal protection thing that he talked about means nothing.
That has no relevance to what we're talking about right now.
Well, it had no relevance the other day, too. But most importantly,
Mr. Gahul, is that your testimony right now, is this pertaining to tonight or last meeting?
No, this is pertaining to tonight.
You're not getting to a point, though, with it. I feel
okay,
you're-
maybe,
If you want to read his comments, Joe, you could read his
Pardon me?
comments.
Why don't we do this? Your objection is that he doesn't meet the requirements for a variance, the 5 requirements for a variance.
I believe that's number one. And number two is, I believe that if we're going to talk about proliferation of signs in a district that was made specifically to prohibit them, to prohibit signs going into Manuka, okay, or to certain sections of South Side, or certain sections of West Side, you know, where you have houses pretty much right next to the billboards. I mean, that's the issue here. And where's the hardship? Because you have a 30-year-old sign that you can barely see? That's not a hardship. And furthermore, he doesn't meet the requirements of the necessary relevant part of being away 250 feet away from a residential dwelling. Okay? I mean, it's as simple as that. I was, a CN district, just let's face the facts, is commercial neighborhood. So you have your, you know, your small Subway shops, your little grocery stores, you know, your funeral homes, things like that. You know, but you have houses across the street. Now, he just said this is going to be illuminated. Okay? Let me tell you something. That's going to light up that whole block. All right? And there's houses every single, as you go down that road, besides, once you pass that building, there's houses across the street and down the street. And there also was a church across the street, which I also believe is a violation of the zoning ordinance, but I couldn't find it. That's all I have to say for now, but I will, you know, reserve my right to come back and talk to, answer anything that I have to after Mr. Joyce.
Mr. Joyce, basically,
Well,
could you run through the
yeah, I'll
elements
try to wrap it up.
necessary for variance and explain to the board why you...
Yes. Well, in terms of standing, Lamar had standing because they have over 2,000 signs in the area, and the spacing is a way to cap signs, so a municipality doesn't have to illegally write legislation where they're going to get sued by billboard companies saying it's a freedom of speech and that whole thing. So they space them out to cap it as well as
I
safety.
object to that.
All right, that doesn't go to the point. Go to
So
your
my
elements
point
for
being,
variance.
Lamar had more standing than anyone because they have 2,000 signs in the market.
Again, Mr. Gahul's been... granted
Again, I don't know if
stand-
Mr.
Object.
Gahuli has any. But I'll
Object
get to
to
my
that.
point. In terms of the lighting and the illumination and the setbacks from the houses, it's, from a residential lot line, it's 200 feet if the illumination from the sign is not facing a residence, where mine would be facing the brick building that the sign is on. Meaning, if you keep going down the street, and you can see in the exhibits here, those are businesses. Those are houses that are now businesses, like a lot of places were converted to over time.
You know,
Secondly,
I'm going to object to that because they're houses and businesses, and there's very few businesses. Mostly they're houses. In fact,
let them come and argue, Joe.
well, I'm just, no, you're
Guys, hold on one second, hold on.
We'll give him...
Mr. Sweeney, like above Bill's Sporting Goods and stuff, is there apartments there, or is that just all commercial use?
I believe Bill's Sporting Goods building is strictly commercial, but I'm not sure.
Because I know
I
there's...
don't remember apartments
That
up
building is
there.
empty.
Okay.
The first floor is not, but upstairs, I think he's right, it is empty.
And anyway, so it's a 200-foot setback, which it does meet, and it's also in a CN zone. It's not a residential line because it is a commercial business. The other point I wanted to make is, I don't know, he said a whole bunch of stuff, and I can't think of it off the top of my head. There's nothing in there about churches in the zoning ordinance. It says places of worship, or excuse me, hospitals, nursing homes, buildings, or et cetera. The illumination on the sign, you could see examples where I have signs with 2 lights. For example, Sandone Tire has 2 lamps on it. If you stand on the other side of the building, you can't see the lights. So there's really no facts or data to support the claim. In terms of the neighborhood, I think the neighborhood has changed since the zoning ordinance has written. Toyota Scranton is there now. That's an economic engine in the city. The whole area has been developed. It's now a gateway into Dixon City, hence the need. People ask me, we'd like to advertise on Main Ave, what is there? And there isn't really anything there. Aside from his opinion, I really don't have much more to say. It's,
I have much more to say.
I'm sorry, to clarify this, if he met all this criteria, he wouldn't be here tonight. The reason he is here is because he needs variances for these. Isn't this the purpose of him being here?
The purpose of him being here is he's asking for a variance.
Exactly. And
To be granted a variance, he has the 5 elements under
He's already stated
111.
his, yeah, 712F1A and
Yeah, 111E3 lists the elements that he has to prove to qualify for a variance.
Right.
And I also
And
suggest,
that's your job to see whether he
Exactly.
qualifies for that.
Yeah, and I think he's making it hard for us to do our job.
No.
By constantly interjecting the person who's here to state his case.
Dan, does he need to have a hardship for a variance?
Yes.
And could you tell us what the hardship is?
there's no specifically any dimensional hardship. The hardship is the landlord wanted to replace the sign that was there, and we came to an agreement. There's really no, I can make up something, but that's not how I'm going to do it. There's a need for advertising. There's an old advertisement on the wall. We figured we'd replace it, and then we could always try going the route of replacing signs, but that wouldn't work out because the nonconformity has a shelf life. So it's a commercial neighborhood. The ordinance, like Mr. Guhuli pointed out, was written for a reason, and one of the big reasons was CN neighborhoods had regulations on signs because people who lived in a CN along 81 might try to put up a huge sign on their yard, or in their yard, 500 feet away from the highway. So that's why they say CN billboards in CN districts have to be within the right, they have to advertise to the interstate or the expressway. So you can't live a half mile away and put up a giant sign for that traffic. That's, in essence, the ideals in the structure behind the ordinance. And we were just looking to replace that sign and saw a need for it. It's not going to change the characteristics of there's a sign there already, whether it's faded and ugly or old.
But I mean, that was a sign, you think, 30 years ago or somewhere?
Dan, you said he has to have a hardship. He tells us that he doesn't have a hardship. I mean, where does that leave us?
Well, we have a hardship because I think in some cases, which we were going to explore, is because we're putting up a wall sign. We're not digging a hole. We're not looking for setbacks where there's going to be a pole in the ground.
But a sign's a sign.
Correct.
Whether you hang
Correct.
it or you
So,
plant it in the
so
ground.
if we went for the route of applying for a wall sign rather than a billboard, we don't need any variances, in which it is. So there's two ways to cut it. We could go the wall sign route and probably end up at the same place we are now, or go the off-premise sign, which is more on the up and up and saying it's a billboard, and replacing the old mural that's there.
So
Mr.
maybe
Gregori
I'm
just-
missing,
I'm sorry.
maybe I'm missing something. Is this sign going to be hung from the building, or you're going to,
It's anchored. It's anchored into the building. Yeah,
so it's not going to the ground at all? It's going to be on the building itself?
it's on the building, identical to the wall sign in the packet you have there.
Dan, I'm a little bit on both sides of this, because obviously there was a sign there at one time, and then now we're saying, maybe 30 years ago. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think in a roundabout way, Mr. Joyce is saying that part one of the variance, there's the unique physical circumstance that creates the hardship is the fact that there's an old faded sign there that was there before. So that's I think what he's aiming at.
That was what we were going to explore for the wall sign application.
How big is the sign that's there now?
That sign there is roughly 19 by 13. So we were going to do 23 by 13, which falls within the size limits of the ordinance.
Is there anyone else to give testimony?
He just doesn't want me to have a sign.
well, I mean, I just was through this, so let's face the facts. Number one is, if he's gonna make the sign bigger, okay, it's not the same size as the existing sign. Number two, are you paying money to the person that owns that property as lease rental to put that sign on there?
How does it now?
No, if you get the permit and you move the sign, yes or no?
Yeah, it's an
Okay.
off-premise sign.
Okay, it's an off-premise sign. Secondly, you just said that the character of the neighborhood was changing with Toyota of Scranton being there and so on and so forth. But when I made my point that it was really close to North Scranton, you made your point that Toyota of Scranton's 2 miles down the road. You know, I can name the people that live on that street. Buddy Cosgrove lives on that street. I mean, no one's gonna...
Your job, and it's facing a Brazilian restaurant.
All I'm going to tell you is that is, and I also believe, Danny, that if violates, he needs 2 variances. And I don't know if he can make that ruling tonight.
Sure he can.
I-
This board's gonna decide that one way or another.
Okay, I believe he needs the 2 variances that we discussed. And Danny could read both of those to you. You know, if we're going to talk about proliferation of the signs,
Nobody's talking about that except you, Joe. I'm here to get a variance, and you're busting my chops because you lost on another thing, which fully hasn't been adjudicated yet. You can still win that.
May-
So
may-
stop crying, take your toys.
may I finish? Here's where I'm coming from, okay? The proliferation of signs, if we were going to talk about that, where I was allowed a sign, a proliferation of signs in a CN district, think about it, commercial neighborhood district, all right, where there's homes all around there. I mean...
Guys,
And-
we
and
do
small business.
understand that, and we do understand the...
Okay, so you understand where I'm coming
Yes.
from, and I would respectfully request that this board take into consideration that if, under the last testimony, if it was truthful testimony Mr. Joyce gave, that the equal protection clause is that if he gets it, then I deserve it, would lead to a proliferation of signs. I don't believe that. He made that statement in the last hearing. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much. And by the way, I thought I won last time. But I lost.
Is there anyone else here to give testimony in the audience? Okay.
I'll make a motion.
On.
His variance that he came for, or do we need to add an extra variance now?
No,
Just what he came for?
Just get what he came
Just
for,
for what he
exactly.
came for.
Second.
Danny, are we gonna do the second?
no, they're both, it's all one variance. You can either put the sign up or you can't put the sign up.
Okay, so but they know about the 250 feet away
Both,
It's 200 feet.
it's 200 feet, but regardless,
of a home.
A residential lot line, it's a commercial business that was once a home.
it doesn't matter at this point. We're combining both sets of
Well, he's-
relief into one.
He's building an air of confusion around this whole thing, and it's...
Did someone want to make a motion? I'll second that motion.
Mr. Walsh?
Is it going to be all together? He needs 2 variances,
No,
right?
just the one.
it's,
Just one, okay.
it's the 2 variances
It's the 2
together.
variances combined when he,
Mr. Walsh?
I'm not against billboard signs, but since I don't see any hardship here, I'm going to vote no.
Mr. Gattens?
Same reason, no.
Mrs. Newcomb?
yeah, I'm voting yes.
Mr. Palmetessa?
Yes.
Chairman O'Neill?
No.
Thank you.
With the vote 3-2, you denied.
Agenda item number 2. The Miller Bean Funeral Home. Attorney Skakiti, please.
Should we make sure everything's okay out there in the hallway? Dan? Should we make sure
They'll be
everything's
fine.
okay out there?
They'll be fine.
Are you attorney, sir?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and you'll be testifying in this?
No.
No.
If you want, you could sit. You don't have to stand the whole time.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the Scranton Zoning Hearing Board, Zoning Officer Sweeney, Solicitor Petitart, Edmund Skakiti from the Skakiti Law Firm in Scranton. We represent Miller Bean LLC, which I think most, if not all of you, know is the Miller Bean Funeral Home in the 400 block of Cedar Avenue in South Scranton. Just by way of brief history, Miller Bean Funeral Home has been at present location since 1870. So it's seen the highs and lows, and the ups and downs, and the changes in the economy, and the changes in the neighborhood over the last 146, 47 years. We're here this evening because initially the client thought that it would be necessary to obtain a variance to construct a crematory on the premises of the funeral home. After doing some research, our application, which is before this board this evening, requests relief in the alternative. The first requested form of relief is an interpretation of a provision of the zoning ordinance and recent case law, which I'll get into in a moment, which we conclude stands for the proposition that the crematory is a permitted accessory use to the funeral home, which is in a CN zone, and as such, the funeral home is a permitted use. This board is bound by the plain language of its ordinance, and also there's case law in Pennsylvania that says that the zoning board, in arriving at its decision, must look at any application and the language in the ordinance in the broadest terms. The idea is to allow the landowner the greatest opportunity to use their property consistent with the ordinance rather than the narrowest terms. Now, in this particular case, as I said a moment ago, the funeral home is presently located and has been located in what is now a CN zone neighborhood commercial. Funeral home is a permitted use in the neighborhood in a CN zone. Back in November of 2016, our Commonwealth Court decided a case called River's Edge Funeral Chapel and Crematory Incorporated versus the Borough of Tullytown, which is in Bucks County. That case essentially addressed the issue why we're here today and seeking an interpretation. What that case said, ladies and gentlemen, is that by law now, a crematory is an accessory use to a funeral home. And in this case, since the funeral home is a permitted use by right in a CN zoning district, the crematory is also allowed as a matter of law. I provided the zoning officer and the solicitor with our legal analysis, including reference to the case law, and we believe that it's a matter that the Miller Bean Funeral Home is entitled to a permit as a matter of law because it is an accessory use to the existing funeral home, which our Commonwealth Court, the appellate court that hears zoning appeals, decided in November of 2016 that yes, a crematory is an accessory use to a funeral home. So on that basis, we're asking for confirmation that our interpretation of section give me a moment here. 306C, permitted accessory uses in all districts, is correct.
So you're basically saying every funeral home, to your word, would be able to have a crematorium?
Only if it's a permitted use in the zoning district in which it's located. In other words, if a funeral home exists in, let's say, a residential zone, an R2, R3 zone, and exists there by a variance that was issued 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago, that would not apply. But because your zoning ordinance says that a funeral home is a permitted use by right in a CN zone, then as a consequence of the Bucks County case from November, which held that a crematory is an accessory use to a permitted as of right use in the CN zone, it becomes, as a matter of law, a right that the funeral home has to erect a crematory.
Dan, can you explain this, how this applies to our zoning law?
Okay.
I don't understand. Doesn't it have to be attached to a cemetery?
No. No, just the opposite. The Commonwealth Court ruled on November 16th of 2016, so basically less than two months ago, that a crematory is always an accessory use to any funeral home. Under our ordinance, we would have to allow any accessory uses to a principal use. And the only kicker in the Commonwealth Court decision which Mr. Skakiti did mention to you guys, it has to be the funeral home itself has to be located in a zone that our ordinance allows funeral homes to be in. In this case, it's a CN zone. If this was a residential zone and they were grandfathered in, that case would not apply.
So we don't get to vote on this at all? They're just,
You, you can disagree with my interpretation.
oh, I don't disagree with your interpretation. I want to know.
I read the case, and I don't see how we could go against the Commonwealth Court in this case.
Dan, has this case been appealed?
Not that I'm aware of, and the 30 days has expired, so.
So all the people that I'm sure are out there too, because it might be in a CN zone, but across the street is not a CN zone. Across the street is residential, so.
Again, doesn't matter.
Well, I have a question. If you say an accessory use?
Accessory use, yes.
Accessory use, well, I'm a little bit, I've never heard that before.
It's defined in your zoning ordinance, if you'd like, I quoted in my letter. Accessory use is defined in the Scranton zoning ordinance as a customarily incidental and subordinate use to the principal use or building and located on the same lot as the principal use or building. So it's defined in your zoning ordinance what it is. And what the Bucks County case says, what the Commonwealth Court held this past November, is that if the use, in the first instance, the funeral home, is permitted in that zoning district, which clearly, as your solicitor has confirmed, it is in a CN zone, it doesn't require, you don't have to have zoning relief to open a funeral home in a CN zone. Then as a consequence of that, by finding that a crematory is an accessory use to a funeral home, then it becomes permitted.
Basically, it doesn't need a variance.
What are the same thing, I'm still a little bit
And define
foggy on
accessory use.
accessory, because I
Yes.
mean, does that mean a flower shop could have a crematorium
Well,
because they're
we've-
also affiliated with?
We've tried many cases as to what's accessory to a principal use. We've gone all the way, I have gone all the way to the Supreme Court on one where a church wanted to have overnight stairs, and was that an accessory use? There's all kinds of case law.
So there's not an
interpreting-
actual definition of,
Other than our ordinance definition, which says it has to be customary, incidental, and subordinate to the principal use.
So
Now-
then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now, that would leave us open to interpretation, and would have left us open to interpretation until that November 16th, 2016 decision, which says we no longer have that interpretation. A crematory is always an accessory use to a funeral home.
I'm just trying to get some sort of guidelines, because my mind's just like spinning from this, just because, so once again, like a flower shop, if they could prove, say, 70% of their business is from funerals, they could say they could have a crematorium because it's
No.
accessory? Okay.
No, it's not a funeral home.
And I
Has to be a funeral
Oh,
home.
it has to be, if that's, that
Has
was
to
my
be a
question.
funeral home.
I didn't know if this could be affiliation with the,
No, has to be an
It has to be-
actual,
It has to be an accessory to a permitted by right funeral home, under that case.
that
So
one that
once
we,
since your zoning ordinance says that a funeral home is permitted by right in the CN zone, which means that if Ed Skakiti decided to send one of his kids to mortuary school and to build a funeral home in a CN zone, we would not have to come before this body for approval because it's permitted. What the Commonwealth Court said is, if it is permitted in that zoning district, and it is, a crematory is an accessory to the existing funeral home business, so therefore it is also permitted.
so, a question, the one that we turned down a couple years back, it was on it was across from Smith's Restaurant.
That was not,
That was just
there was
a
no funeral
crematory,
home
right?
there.
That was the gentleman, I looked at that
Okay.
case,
Yeah, there-
Ms. Newcomb.
there was-
That
there
was
was
the
no
gentleman
funeral.
who had a casket company.
Well, my question was, are all these people that have been turned on in the past,
No.
will they be able
No.
to appeal any of these zoning board decisions?
No,
That
they-
gentleman
based on
had a
this new
casket
law?
company, went to a crematory. In fact, years before that, I think one of the cemeteries in Scranton,
I was gonna say the same thing. We turned down one in a cemetery, we turned down one adjacent to a casket company.
Okay, so it was years ago, I just remember the word crematory.
I have a question for you here.
yes, sir.
according to this ordinance, it says accessory use customarily incidental and subordinate to the principal use of the building and located on the same lot with such principal use or building.
Yes.
That's not the same lot.
Yes, it is.
It's
We
right
pro-
behind it.
Yeah, we provided the solicitor with a copy of the deed. All of the parcels are described on the same deed.
Is that the lot that's immediately behind it, or the lot that's closer
It
to
was
the back?
actually the old livery, back in the days in horse and buggy. That's where the funeral home kept the horses and buggies. It's actually on the Hickory Street side of the campus, if you will, of the Miller Bean Funeral Home, but it's part of the same lot.
Now, how do, since we don't actually get to vote on this now, and all these
Well,
neighbors
it's
are...
not that
Well,
we
you-
don't get to vote.
I mean,
You still get to vote.
we get to vote if it's skipped, okay, because I didn't know if we were going to be
Dan,
able to vote on this or not.
If we don't agree with your
I took it, I know.
interpretation of what the what if we don't agree with the Commonwealth Court?
Then you're exposing yourself to a surcharge in the event of an appeal and the cost for that appeal.
Can't disagree with that.
That's what happens. I mean, if you knowingly violate the law and the advice and instruction and interpretation of your solicitor, you could be personally liable for the cost by the Miller Bean Funeral Home or any other applicant to appeal a case. And that's the law.
How many bodies were cremated by Miller Bean and Associates
And,
last year?
At
None.
at a crematory other than...
There is no crematory in the city of Scranton. I believe the closest one is in Archbold, because until the Commonwealth Court decided the Bucks County case in November, there was no connecting the accessory use to the existing conforming use.
But they would have taken them to, they would have taken their bodies to another crematory and cremated them at
Well, they
those
had no
locations.
choice, because there was none in the
Right,
city
I
of
think that's what
Scranton.
he's, is that
That's
what
what I'm
that's what he
asking.
wants to know, is how
There's
many...
none in the city of Scranton, because the uniqueness that the Miller Bean Funeral Home has in this case is, number one, it's permitted in the zoning district that it's in, and number two, the state law is now that if you are permitted in your zoning district and you're a funeral home and not a flower shop and not anything else, you can have a crematory, and it's not a matter that requires zoning relief. That's our interpretation. I believe your solicitor concurs with that interpretation.
I think he wants to know how many bodies did they have to have cremated? How many clients did they have cremated last year somewhere
None.
else?
None.
Yes,
None.
but they've
So-
had clients.
Oh.
They
but
want to
what-
have
but
cremated, then they
that's
had to bring them.
But that is irrelevant.
Well, yes, well, that might give us some idea of how often the crematory might be.
But it doesn't really matter, because you see, you're missing the point, Ms.
I get the point. I'm just
Okay, so you're missing the point. Whether it's
answering
5 or
future
50,
questions for the audience members.
whether it's 5 or 50, it doesn't really matter, because the law says that it's permitted now because it is an accessory to the funeral home, not an accessory to a barber shop.
I understand this.
Okay,
I
so-
think that some
so
people
it-
might have some questions as to operation of the crematory once it's, if it ever gets...
The crematory itself is going to be governed by the city building codes and also DEP. So once it's constructed, things like emissions and everything else will be all governed by state law. But the building itself, the physical appearance of the building will not change at all. You won't even know it's there. It's not something that's going to change the physical appearance of the existing structure.
I think,
I'm asking about hours of operation. That was what my question was. Hours of operation for the crematory for the future. That's what my question was. She's
Yeah,
going to
but
have
what
to,
the
she's
hours
going to
of
have to
operation
answer
would
some of
be?
those questions.
What would be the
Because
hours of operation?
we're going to have to bring up some audience members
It
to
would
answer.
be during the daytime. I mean, you're not going to be doing this in the evening.
Some of them will probably want to know these answers, so.
But again, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
So Dan, if it doesn't matter, at what point?
You want to be a good neighbor.
If we want to continue this, we have to disagree with you.
Pretty much.
So
You'd have to disagree with my interpretation of that particular case, yes.
I know lots of other crematories that have hours of operation, that are legal
It'd be-
crematories. They burn bodies within a certain amount of hours.
It'd
and that's
be between, not earlier than 7 a.m., Valerie? And not later than 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon? See, they can only handle so much. These are individual
Well, this is
cremations.
all I wanted to know. This is
Okay.
the only question I wanted answered.
Okay, so it's not going to be like mass-produced, because the
Well-
equipment can't handle that. And remember, everybody that goes to a funeral doesn't have a cremation.
Dan, can we take 5 minutes to talk to you off the record?
I think that'd be a violation of sunshine law.
Okay.
Well, I think.
Well, we were just looking for advice.
Questions, yeah.
Well, you can ask me questions.
All right, well, I think what most of these people are going to be here for tonight is one, not so much is totally against it, is for information. I mean, this is coming into, and it still is a residential area. I mean, it's commercial residential. So I think the lack of knowledge on just what's going to be there. Until tonight, I had no idea where you were putting this. I mean, the application didn't even state what building, so I went down and looked at it. I mean, so the application I felt was very vague for me to vote on it at that point. And I understand where you're coming from now with the new case law and everything like that, but still, I think if you would address some of the questions that the neighbors have.
I think that's only
Was
fair.
it-
I agree with you.
What, sorry?
I think that's only fair that.
Okay, and let me bring
we
Valerie
answer this.
Miller-Bean up here, and she can address some of those questions.
I mean, I don't mean anything wrong, but instead of saying it doesn't matter, I mean, it does matter to these people.
No, I'm saying as a matter of law, it doesn't matter.
Right, I understand that.
I have no problem with assuaging the anxieties about the neighborhood, because it's I said, in my letter I state, and I'll say again, the physical appearance of the structure where the crematory will be located will not change at all. You won't even know it is there.
I think a lot of the concerns is what's going to be coming off the stack as far as chemicals.
That is all governed, Mr. Gaddens, by DEP. In other words, DEP will regulate what comes out of the stack. And this evening, I have with me an expert from the company who is going to be involved in the process. Ron, you want to come up?
Thank you.
This is Ronald Salvatore. He is with the company who's going to be involved in the project. You're going to have to be sworn in, Ron, if you don't mind. And we'll allow the board to pose questions, but please, again, bear in mind.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I just want to finish by saying that please bear in mind that all of this, every aspect of this is regulated by state law, including DEP, when you talk about emissions and so on. So in that regard, if you have questions or the public has questions, I'm sure Ron can answer them.
State your name and address.
Would you like my company address or my personal address?
Company name.
Okay. My name is Ronald Salvatore. I work for Matthews Environmental Solutions. Our address is 2045 Sprint Boulevard, Apopka. That's A-P-O-P-K-A, Florida, 32703. Certainly.
They're environmental experts, I believe, so you're going to give information, is this?
I'm sorry. I
Someone
couldn't
had a
hear.
comment that you're from Florida. I think
Just
they
please
were-
don't speak from the audience. Wait your turn to come up, please.
You're just going to give, you're going to give information on?
Whatever question.
He's been asking questions
Could
of the board.
Could you just explain the operation of the unit and as far as, I'll say as far as what's released from the stack, if anything's released from the stack? I know it's controlled, but if you're an expert in that case, I think I'd rather hear from you tonight than...
As the attorney had stated, first off, if I may, let me go back one. We have over 100 units operating in Pennsylvania now. Most of them are located in funeral homes. So there has not been DEP, I will share with you, has the most stringent environmental regulations of any state in the country other than New York. New York and Pennsylvania are the exact same. They are more stringent than that of the state of California. If you grant approval, what the next step will be is the applicant, Valerie Bean, has to submit an application to DEP. It'll go to the regional office, and it takes about 4 to 5 months for DEP to process it. We have to provide them with actual stack test data, that what comes out of the stack. We have to provide them with all the emission calculations, the design calculations, and based on that data, based on other information that is provided, DEP will deny or approve the application. Only then can we then begin the manufacturing and schedule the delivery of the equipment.
So, in your knowledge, what comes out of that stack?
I couldn't articulate all the things that come out of a stack. Any natural gas burning appliance emits the exact same emissions. What DEP regulates are what they call criteria pollutants: particulate matter, carbon monoxide, SO2, which is sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen oxides. Those are the emissions that DEP regulates.
Any questions from you guys?
I mean, I know it's kind of silly, but if it's stuff coming out of the stack and the restaurant across the street is sucking fresh air in for their Ansel system and stuff, is that being sucked right into the restaurant, or?
No.
Where's it going?
The gases are emitted, I can't tell you exactly where gases will flow, but based on the estimated stack height, based on that building location, the stack is going to have to extend above the building that is adjacent to it. That's what we call good engineering practice, and it's also going to be mandated by DEP. And then we use what we call for lack of a better word, it's an injector. It's an inducer that creates a draft to force the gases out, and that creates a better dispersion than, for example, your fireplace. Your fireplace that you may be burning wood in is natural draft, so the emissions go very little and they fall on the property lines. Manufacturers of cremation equipment all use fan inducers to create greater draft, which increases the dispersion of the gases. But a building that is, I have units that are next to restaurants all over the country, and there's no issue whatsoever.
Thank you.
Certainly.
How long does it take for the process, from the time I'll say the button is pushed to the finished process?
The actual cremation time, which is what you're asking about, is on average about 2 hours.
And what temperatures does it reach?
DEP mandates that the unit operate at 1800 degrees. And along with that mandate, there are a temperature recording system that has to be installed, and that is what is proof that the unit is operating at the 1800 degree temperature. And there are also some what we call interlocks, so that if the unit cannot achieve that temperature, they cannot start the actual cycle.
Just one more question. Is there noise emitted from the unit when it's running that will be heard outside of the building?
If somebody were on that downside of that, I'm going to call it the ravine, I'm not really, that area, they would hear the fan of the unit if they were on that side of the building.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
I know you probably can't answer this, but some of the people across the street, even though it's commercial, there are still residents across the street. Do you have any idea? You probably don't. Real estate might have to come in and reevaluate property values, a crematory.
I'm not a real estate agent, so I can't.
No, I didn't say you were. I said, do you have any idea if this might affect?
I've been doing
The lawyer might be able to
I've been
answer
doing
that
this for
question.
20, I've been doing this for
I don't think even the
I'm
lawyer's
not qualified.
They're going to
to
want to
answer that.
know. So,
Yeah,
so
I'm
if
not
someone doesn't
qualified,
answer
but-
that, it's going to get asked
Yeah.
anyway. Property values are going to be, it's going to be a big question.
I think when you understand, though.
Only a real
Do you
estate
have any
expert
idea if
can
this is propane or natural gas powered?
We're going to use natural gas.
Okay.
And what's the diameter of the stack itself that comes out of the building?
The inside or the outside
The outside, the outer diameter of everything,
is 33 inches.
33 inches, and it has a second chamber inside it. Am I right by saying that?
It doesn't have, I'm not sure could you explain it or rephrase your question, please?
That's not, there's something else inside of that 33 inches.
Right, the inside diameter is about 20 inches. So there's a refractory lining that is a liner that is installed inside the stack.
How long does it take that to get up to 1800 degrees? Now, that's only in the state of Pennsylvania, am I right by saying
New York
that?
and Pennsylvania. Yeah, and it's about an hour.
And then the process is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you put the body in, it stays in for X amount of time, then it has to cool down, and then you clean it out.
That's correct.
So that there's never, ever, no cross-contamination with another body or anything to that effect.
That's
Am
correct.
I right by saying that?
Yes, you are.
And just inherent in that process, Mr. Palmetessa, you get an understanding that you're not going to have funeral hearses backed up on Cedar Avenue because it's going to take a couple of hours for each process. And during a normal workday, you're talking about, on the best case scenario, 3, maybe 4 times you could do it, assuming there's even that kind of demand. We don't know what the demand is going to be. Again, it may be something that works, maybe it's something that not works, but just because of the process itself, inherent in the time involved in getting the thing up to speed, heat-wise, going through the process, the completion process, and cleaning it out for the next application, that's going to take, that's probably going to be limited just a couple of 2 or 3 times a day.
With that, with what you just said there, and I'll ask you, she hasn't been sworn in. Could you swear? I'll ask her a question.
Step up and be sworn in, please. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name and address, please.
Valerie Miller Bean, and I live at 436 Cedar Avenue in Scranton at the Miller Bean Funeral Home.
If this is successful, which I'm sure it will be, do you see yourself down the road adding on to this? Is your facility capable of putting another unit inside that building?
Is there room for an additional unit
If need be?
Yes.
And would you consider at that point expanding?
I'm just starting here. I'm not looking that far ahead.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, it's just more for
And,
information
you know,
purposes.
that's the truth. I'm just starting here with this.
She's taking
One
it-
step at a time.
She's taking a financial gamble. I hope you understand that. She has no studies or research or anything else that what kind of return that this is going to be. What Ms. Miller Bean realized is that it is not anywhere in the city of Scranton where this is permitted, and by virtue of that case that we've discussed a moment ago, it is now permitted right where she lives. And by the way, I think it's also important to note, she lives where this is going to be located. And I would think she would be rather foolish to get involved in something that would expose herself and her family and other people there to something that's going to be toxic. And clearly, Ron has pointed out that there's no toxins that come out of there. It's
Well,
the same as a gas-fired boiler. Am I right, Ron? A gas-fired heating system in a home? What comes out of that stack?
Natural gas, whether it's out of a cremation system, a fireplace, a hot water tank, are all releasing the exact same emissions.
I can't see it, like you say, she's gambling. I mean, if she's the only game in town, chances are it's gonna be a pretty good gamble, I would say, right?
But she'll tell you that funeral homes are like lawyers. Nobody wants to give another lawyer business, and nobody wants to give another funeral home business. So we don't know what that's going to be. But it doesn't matter what's a gamble or not. She lives there, and I think that's important for this board to understand, that she's not going to do anything that's going to expose herself, her family, or even people who patronize the funeral home to something that's going to be less than regulated, and it is going to be regulated.
Well, I know it's important for the board, but I mean, as we all know, our hands are tied here tonight. I'm looking more important for them to understand that.
And I understand that,
It's a
and I
good
said,
point.
I made a point of mentioning in my letter, and I think each of you has a copy of my letter. You are not going to notice anything about the physical structure that's different from the way it is today, except for the stack that Mr. Santori referenced. Otherwise, it looks the same. It's not going to generate vibration. It's going to have some fan noise if you're down below, but not at ground level. So it's not going to really make any difference. People will quickly forget that it's even there. We're not going to have funeral hearses lined up on Hickory Street or Cedar Avenue. It's not going to be that kind of operation. Again, just because of the fact that it takes up to 3 hours to go through the completed process, you can't do that type of volume anyway.
He didn't mention, is there gonna be a smell of any kind that they're gonna smell? No smell at all?
No, not from that.
Do you see smoke coming out or
You should
nothing?
not see any smoke whatsoever.
Again, this is all regulated. Pennsylvania and New York have the strictest regulations in the entire country governing this operation. So we wouldn't be here asking for this if we weren't certain that we're not going to pose directly or indirectly any environmental issues.
Did you speak to any of the neighbors before you were aware of this law that took place,
Did I speak to any of the neighbors?
yes, before you made this decision? That you,
No. Really, there's no neighbors to speak to.
well, there's the whole, above the church, there's all residential down the street. Above all behind the Hickory
we're
Street
down
Church,
at-
there's residences. Up the
down
hill, Orchard Street, all residents.
We're at the very dead end of the 300 block of Hickory Street.
I know,
It's not-
my Girl Scout troop is right up the hill, and there's houses behind it. I know, not within a 200 feet, but there's still, if there's gonna be smoke,
But there
it
isn't
might
going to be
affect them.
smoke.
There's
There
no
isn't going to
smoke.
be smoke. Did you listen to the
Is that
expert?
is that a 100% guarantee that there's not gonna be smoke?
Yes. Well,
I'm sorry, I apologize. We can't, there's no way you can guarantee anything in life like that.
Well,
I couldn't, if you have a power outage, I'm sorry, no. What we state categorically, as long as the equipment is operated properly and maintained properly, which is part of DEP's permit process, that you have to operate it and you have to maintain it because DEP puts into the permit what their requirements are. But no one could make that claim that you would never, ever, just like you could say, never say your automobile will always turn on today. I'm sorry, I can't make that
Yeah, people, because
claim.
in the past, crematories have not, have not testified that there isn't going to be any smoke.
I will simply say that we have never had a unit in Pennsylvania ever shut down by DEP. And we have, actually, we probably got well over 100. And some of them are as old as, there are some that we've had installed in here since the 1970s. And certainly you can contact DEP, they will tell you the exact same thing.
I wasn't questioning that, I just wanted to know about the smoke.
Okay, let's open this up to the audience, and obviously, it appears like our hands are actually tied with this matter, but we will let you voice your concerns if you guys want to speak and come up. And just keep in mind, let's not say the same stuff over and over again.
Good evening.
Raise your right hand.
Steve Wallace,
Do you
Southside resident.
solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name and address.
Steve
please.
Wallace, 707 South Webster Avenue, Scranton, PA. Okay, I've done a lot of research on this. I'm also from New York and had my late wife cremated. This is an industrial business. It's not a commercial product. It's an industrial item. They come in various sizes, shapes, configurations. They can cost up to $400,000 for one unit. The units are as big as the county you're sitting at. They do burn high energy fuel and they burn at high energy rates. The stack for the building is supposed to be 3 sections, 3 meters high, above the roof line. That's 20 feet. And it's right over the river corridor. And don't tell me there's not going to be an emission. Anything that burns has an emission, whether you see it or not. It also puts out hydrogen dioxide, which is a defoliant as far as Agent Orange is concerned, which I suffer from. It's one of the byproducts. It also has fluorocarbons and hydrocarbons and everything else coming out of it. Now, there's different types of units. I don't know which one they're talking about. I don't know which one they presented because they haven't presented anything. Mr. Penatar talks about case law from Bucks County. Well, this is Scranton.
No, I did not talk about Bucks County.
No, I'm
This
talking
is a
about
state
the case. Yes, I know, but it was brought up in Bucks County.
But it
All
was
right.
decided by the
The
state.
state law doesn't apply as far as this variance to this board, because we have our own home rule charter in Scranton and our own variance code. What is the variance code for building an industrial product in a CN neighborhood? I don't know.
One
They're
thing,
saying they're putting it in an
Jack,
application.
will this meet height requirements for the building? He just said it has to go, how high?
According to what I read, the stack has to be 3 sections, 3 meters high.
Well, first of all, I haven't seen any plans either.
That's what I mean. They're presenting this to you without any
I couldn't tell you what
information. They're just saying the application has to apply because it's a funeral home.
If the stack goes above the height restrictions for a CN zone, they would have to come back here for a variance for the height restrictions.
I also believe that if the gentleman's telling you he needs EPA approval to even do this, then they should come back when they have the EPA approval and present it to you. Not before it's even done.
I believe you have to get the.
You have to have zoning approval first before you go to
the cart before the horse.
DEP.
No, I mean.
They won't
doesn't
even
the DEP
entertain an
Don't they
application.
have to present their findings to you on where it's
No.
gonna be and all that?
No.
Well, that seems backwards to me. Because the environmental protection information I read says this thing's not that safe in our residential area. That's all my opinion. Take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Steve.
Anyone else would like to come up and state anything? Come on up, sir.
How you doing?
Hello. If
Obviously,
you,
it's a business.
hold on one second, miss. If you want to raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
So help me God.
State your name and
My name is
your address.
Roseanne Wallace. I live 707 South Webster Avenue. My question is,
Are you with that gentleman that was just here?
yes, I
Okay.
am.
You're his
Okay.
wife?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
My question is, you're gonna have an event going that way. Well, going that way is the river. We're just bringing up our fishing.
You have to speak into the mic, miss. I
I'm
can't.
sorry, we're just bringing up our fishing. We are looking to improve Scranton. Now, if you let this happen, it's gonna be a gateway for all the funeral homes to have one. You're like cornering the market, and it's not right. You're putting a lot of people, and I don't care if it's on a dead-end street, the wind blows everywhere. Okay, so we got birds, beautiful birds, we got bees, we got butterflies, they all pollinate. What's gonna happen to that? Well, I mean, we're just bringing back the American eagle, I mean, come on. I mean, you're polluting the air with dead people. In Bucks County, it's raw, okay? And I know Bucks County because, you know what? I'm a thriller seeker. Yeah, they make the movies out there. It's all raw area.
Is there any adverse effect to wildlife, to your knowledge?
You have to contact,
Oh.
no, but you have to talk to DEP. I'm not an expert.
You see, you don't know. And our wildlife is gonna go down. Our
I'm
fishing's gonna
asking,
go
I'm
down.
asking the questions for you.
Thank you. See, they don't know. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come up? Raise your right hand, and do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name and address, please.
Christopher Kays.
You can move that up.
Christopher Kays, 1001 South Webster Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania. You mentioned a number of chemicals and whatnot that are filtered and won't be emitted. I didn't hear mercury come up. I know in the fillings of teeth, when that's burnt down, that it creates mercury emissions. Is that correct?
I don't know. We don't know.
Yes.
Could address it, please.
Everything I read said the mercury emissions are a factor.
US EPA, you can go to the website. They have done exhaustive studies on crematories with respect to mercury, and mercury accounts from crematories accounts for less than 0.1% of all mercury emissions. So it's literally trace amounts, so low that PA, DEP, and no other state in the country regulates emissions of crematories for mercury because it's so low.
But there is mercury emission.
If there is a dental amalgam that has mercury in the body, yes, and it's the same thing if you put it into the ground over time, whatever will happen to it.
I think that's what most of these people are worried about, mainly is the mercury emissions.
Okay.
That's, I don't want to reiterate what, I don't want to repeat what Mr. Wallace said, so I'm going to sit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, come on up. Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name and address, please.
My name's Andrew Chomko. I live on 1228 Prospect Avenue. I have a couple questions for you, sir. And a comment. Funeral directors aren't like lawyers. This time next year, I possibly should be getting my funeral director's license. I'm currently going to Northampton Community College, pursuing a mortuary science degree. I agree. There should be a crematory inside the city of Scranton. As of right now, any funeral home that is doing business and keeping their head above water, 30 to 40% cremation rate right now. By the year 2025, there's going to be in excess of 60% cremation rate. So it's the way it's going. I hope you guys understand. I hope you guys understand. It's needed. I mean, if you don't want a crematory inside the city, I don't know, maybe you should consider sticking to traditional burials. Sorry, the truth hurts, but it is what it is. Our constituents, our people, our relatives, our friends, our neighbors, our family, they're speaking through their final means of disposition. So I have a couple questions for the property owner and/or the operating funeral director there, meaning the person whose license is hanging in that establishment. Ma'am, I don't know you. Hi, I'm Andy.
Hi.
Are you the property owner? Are you the operating manager of that facility?
Can you take that microphone that's sitting in front of your attorney?
Sorry.
We all work together, yeah, I mean...
No, are you the manager, like,
Am I a licensed funeral director?
Right.
Yes.
But under Pennsylvania law, every single funeral home needs to have a licensed operating manager.
She's not only that, she's also certified as a crematory operator.
I understand that, sir.
Are you talking about supervisor of funeral home?
Yes.
No, I'm not the supervisor of the funeral home.
So you're not the supervisor of the funeral home that you own?
Correct.
Okay. How many retorts are you going to put in there?
Just one for now.
Just one for now. Is the Miller Bean Funeral Home establishment located at that address? Is that retort exclusively going to be used for the Miller Bean Funeral Home, meaning no other funeral home could use that?
Right now, this is the first step.
Right, I understand, ma'am. I understand.
I mean...
And this is something that I'd like to consider to the board and Mr. Solicitor. I'm sorry I don't know everyone's names. I'm sure I'll get to know you. I'm just young, getting into business and the funeral directing stuff and all that good stuff. But this is something that the city's going to have to set parameters around, guidelines, regulations. If it is going to be on the property of a listed funeral home that is in the CN zoning board or zoning area, I recommend that the council say that it is only used for that specific funeral home and no other funeral homes. Something that you might want to research into, because Lackawanna County Recorder of Deeds has a couple different things here. I can show them to you. I'm not sure what they mean, but I know that, I don't know, it's public knowledge. You can get this stuff anywhere. You guys should look into some of this stuff before you grant it. Apparently our hands are tied, but I don't think they are, sir. I really don't. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else to give testimony?
No.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
State your name and address, please.
My name is Joanne Phillips, and I'm at 617 Willow Street in South Scranton. And basically speaking as a concerned citizen on a number of levels, I know that the United Neighborhood Centers has done a great deal of work in the Cedar Avenue area. I've heard that they've had prospects of considering that a gateway area between the iron furnaces and South Scranton, hoping to put in like a cultural marketplace and have businesses thriving there and so on. In the last couple of days, this has come up as a matter of conversation online, of course, social networking being so big. I do know about scholarly research enough to know that not everything I see on the internet is true, but I have seen enough things that concerned me a great deal about emissions from similar facilities that were spewing black smoke. People were complaining about their eyes burning, about ash, a great deal of concerns about toxic emissions, including mercury. We do have we have a playground 2 blocks away. We have 2 schools 3 blocks away, 4 blocks away. There are a lot of concerns, and I did do some online research. I found that there's very little regulation of the emissions, and also no real statutes governing how these things are positioned, the distance between them, et cetera. So as a concerned neighbor and someone I would hope would be a good neighbor, you have to understand that we as residents would have concerns. It may be a commercially zoned area that you are in, but across the street, it does become highly residential. Many children. I have a 4-month-old grandchild and another one on the way that I hope may come live with me. So, yes, I'm very concerned. Okay, and I guess that's about it. I do have an article that I printed off. This was actually from a crematory association that discusses a recent denial of a similar zoning ordinance request, and basically detailed the kind of things I said, that there really are very little regulations for this sort of thing. It's very concerning, and the things I've seen online about the emissions and so on, once these things are established and then they become a problem, or they have in some instances, it's a nightmare for the local people. So I don't know if you folks want to see this, or...
So Dan, just a quick question, so I'm clear, and the board is clear. If we don't agree with you, we can be financially held reliable for their appeal.
Well, I don't know whether you personally, but the city could.
And what happens if we don't agree with you, or we do agree with you? What will happen if we don't agree?
If you don't agree, then Mr. Skikidi has the two opportunities. One, to appeal the interpretation, or to go forward with the variance request.
Just as another point, Mr. Walsh, based on that Bucks County case, which is now the law of the land in Pennsylvania, which is why we're entitled to this permit for the crematory, really, we didn't have to come here. We could have gone to Mr. Sweeney, and he can confirm this, and asked him to issue a permit for the crematory. We did this as a courtesy to this board, and to allow people to understand that it's not a threat to the neighborhood. There's only one expert in this room tonight. That gentleman is seated to my left. Heavily regulated by DEP, but we didn't even have to come here. Mr. Sweeney could have issued a permit.
Well, hold on one second. That's not doing us a favor, because if we vote against, then you're putting us in peril.
Well, that's...
So doing a favor, that's, by no means that's a favor.
We came here to allow this to be public. We didn't have to do that. I'm saying we could have asked for a permit. Mr. Sweeney would be bound to issue that permit, and anyone who objected this evening would have a right to appeal that permit to this body, but you'd be facing the same issue.
I think what you need to understand too, Mr. Katie, is our hands are tied because of law. I mean, and we're used to ruling on zoning that affects our air and everything. So this is one of the few cases that came before us so far that I can speak of, that where we're coming before us, and there's really nothing we can do. So I mean, we have concerns naturally for the neighborhood, and by no means we're trying to stop a business from coming in there. So I mean, we are going to have concerns. We're going to have concerns the way we vote and everything. I do appreciate you coming forward. I would like to appreciate, though, a little bit more information on that application, because it's like buying a car and never seeing it, voting on that application the way it was, before we even knew about that law. So I speak for myself on this, but I would have liked to see just information given to us so we would have some knowledge coming into the meeting. So we do have some reservations and concerns, which are natural to anybody.
And I think there's a natural inclination to have those reservations, Mr.
Sure.
Gattens, but I think if you've heard one thing this evening, you've heard from the only expert in this room this evening, that this is a highly controlled environment. And it's not something that's going to change the physical appearance of the structure, nor is it going to change the characteristics of that neighborhood.
I believe the gentleman, I really do. I'm looking at what's going to change what impact that's going to have on the neighborhood as a whole, not just the emissions out of there. Our concerns naturally, and I'm sure the majority of the concerns is what impact it's going to have on Cedar Avenue. And evidently none, as you say. I mean, but I'm just saying, I wasn't as much concerned about the emissions after listening to the gentleman. And I'm sure he knows what he's talking about, and he's a representative of the company that's selling that unit. But naturally, we have concerns, and
I understand. And I think that's not unusual, but again, I grew up in Southside. I've seen Southside change tremendously in my time on this earth. I was away for some time, I'm back. I like what's happening there. What is being proposed here is not going to in any way directly or indirectly affect whatever progress is being made, because again, it is not something that's out in the open. It's changing the physical appearance of the building. It's generating some type of noise or vibration or anything. It's going to be part of the development of that area, not in a negative way, but in a positive way. And as that gentleman who just testified a moment ago said, sooner or later, it's going to be a regular thing in this city. Once our city council decides to go back and look at this zoning ordinance, which is ancient. We are the, fourth or fifth largest city in the state of Pennsylvania, and our zoning ordinance, I can tell you as a professional, is an abomination.
right, and I agree with you, but until that point, this book is what we have to work.
But as that gentleman said, this is the future of this industry. It's no way, shape, or form.
Sure.
You know, it's future is industry. So the fact that this applicant is the first one to be here is...
She's going to take the heat.
Pardon me?
She's going to take the heat.
She's going to take heat. We understand that, but we're not violating the law. Your own solicitor has expressed that to you. It would be contrary to the law to say no, and I hope that you find favor with this application.
Dan, do we even have to vote if our vote means pretty much nothing?
Well, because it's here on an interpretation question, we have to...
Someone in the audience has their hand up. Does he wish to speak also? You can continue while he's walking up here.
I said because it's here on an interpretation question, we have to... I have to give an interpretation and you have to agree or disagree with me, basically.
So it's like an appeal then, okay.
Is there any way that we can limit the hours of operation? Or, as someone else suggested, keep it to just that funeral home?
I don't think you can keep it to that funeral home because it'd be an infringement on business.
Okay.
But can we limit the hours of operation?
Member of the LLC.
While you think about that, we can listen
Yeah,
to this
let me
man's
think about
testimony.
that one.
Infringement.
You'd have to come back.
You have to come back up, Dave, if you have a question.
But sir,
Let him
go
take
ahead.
care of this.
Raise your right hand, sir. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. My name's Edward Chomko Sr., 262 Railroad Avenue. I came here for an education, and I'm getting one. I have a lot of issues with what's being said, how it's being... Boy, I wish you'd get a cough drop.
I've been popping them. I have them, I've been popping them.
There's so many interpretations, individuals, self-interpretations, my interpretation of what's being said by each of you, and not one of them is combining together with one concise answer. I'm asking before you vote tonight to call yourself a special meeting and get all your concerns together. The second thing I'm going to ask is, there's several funeral homes in the city. Many of them have been here. We're in our fourth generation, family-owned, no corporation, no limited liability corporation. We are self-sustaining, own property in the city forever, pay our taxes on time. What I am concerned is when you see an LLC, that means there's somebody else's hand in the pocket. And I don't think that has been brought out today, and I think it should be. Secondly,
I don't
about,
necessarily believe that. You're just protecting yourself financially from that.
Creditors.
well,
I-
when other
Mr.
funeral
Chairman,
homes...
I just think this is totally inappropriate. Not
No.
only that.
Well,
and I say
Ed,
this, Eddie.
I've talked to
Eddie,
you before at
Eddie, I say this
times,
with all
and-
due respect. This is like the two billboard war guys
Can I-
that were here
can I-
before.
Guys,
Okay?
Can I speak?
One second, let him,
I would appreciate it if
You
I
may
could
proceed.
speak.
No, it's- oh.
I'm not an attorney, I don't wish to be. There's enough of them around. What I am asking is, if you allow a funeral home to open up a crematory there, at their present property, on the other hand, you're turning other funeral homes down to operate a crematory where they have much larger facilities, much larger space. The gentleman from Matthews said there has never been a crematory that has been closed down by the Department of Environmental Protection. I disagree with him. Approximately 31 years ago, Maple Hill Crematory over in Wilkes-Barre
I don't believe that's what he said.
were closed. They were closed because of emissions. Those are old retorts, they were rebuilt. However, when we're talking about a crematory and a funeral home, there's a lot of parameters. There's different sizes. What size are you going to use? Do you understand the cremation process? Are you very familiar with it? I understand the individual from Matthews. He is their rep. He's supposed to have all the answers. But ask him. Different size, different weights going into a retort. If you put an oversized body into that retort, what happens? You don't think about those things. You don't think about those things because you're not in that line of business. Before, I had, 4.5 years ago, Mr. Wallace knows, I had applied for a variance up at the cemetery off of Kane Street. We're more than 1,000 feet away from a residence where we were going to put that crematory. We were denied. It is a heavy industrial zone plus cemeteries. That's all that's there. I was denied. I lost a lot of money on that. My insurance company didn't pay me for it. But what I'm saying is that if there may be a possibility that I may seek legal counsel farther down the road if this happens.
Well, I could speak for myself and the other board members. We put great thought into each case, but unfortunately, with this case, our hands are tied.
I understand the
So-
state rules. I understand. We cannot oversee it. But what you can do is start changing some of the parameters within the city. Start looking at the funeral homes that do wish to have it for their own use, not bringing in.
Not to interrupt you, but I
outsiders.
think that's something you'd be better off going before city council.
I understand.
And ask them to make an amendment.
I
There's nothing we
understand.
can do about that right now. And
This is why I asked for you not to vote on this tonight, but start talking between yourselves.
Well, in all honesty, it's not going to make it, we could talk to her blue, the law's the law, and that's what we're going to
I understand the law.
have to follow.
We
I
can
understand
disagree with the
Thank you.
law.
I'm sorry?
We can disagree with the law. I don't agree with a lot of laws, but
The law is the law.
like, the last
law-
person who spoke said there's social media. This was, he said he didn't have to come. He wanted to make it public. It was already public because social media made it public.
No,
I
we-
heard what Mr. Chomko is, he said what he said. I saw his comment on social media. I saw what it said. I just ignored it because I saw what the content was. It's been public.
Yeah.
We don't have to agree with it, but
I understand, the law is the law. But I am also going to add to it that you're going to have several other funeral homes coming in, and they're going to be asking for the same thing. And just as
Actually, they don't even have to come in.
Right.
well,
Case.
There was a
he
say-
says as long as they're in commercial areas, right? See, I think industrial is more the ticket
If
than
they-
commercial, but.
If the funeral home is located in a district in
commercial.
which funeral homes are allowed under our ordinance, then they don't have to come in.
So-
that is correct, but look at our zoning
So if
areas.
so
They're
if a
so
funeral home is in a
antiquated.
residential area, they're still allowed to have a
Well,
crematory?
like we said,
That was what I was
let's have you go in front of the city council. That's about the best we could do.
No, I know that.
Let's go ahead and,
Thank you for your time.
okay.
Thank you.
Dan, that's what I didn't get about that, so,
Back to my question, Dan.
yeah.
I don't think I'd go there right now.
Okay.
Answer to that question? What was the answer?
Right now, we're just interpreting whether it's the same case as the Commonwealth Court case. My interpretation is it is.
I'll make a motion.
So how are we going to be voting before we do that?
You're going to agree with my interpretation or disagree with my interpretation?
Okay. I'll second it, I'm sorry. Oh,
Mr. Walsh,
I agree.
Mr. Cattens,
Agree.
Ms. Newcomb.
oh my gosh, my hands are tied, I don't know. I'm going to agree that it falls under, I'm just not going to like it, I want that on the record.
Mr. Palmetessa,
Agree.
Chairman O'Neill.
Agree with the, regret that my hands are tied.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With a vote of 5-0, it's passed. We're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Agenda item number 3, 902 South Webster Avenue.
Okay. Want to raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear the truth, the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name and address, please.
Frank Fredemico, 714 Beach Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
We're
I have-
actually here, my name's Chris Osborne.
Are you a lawyer?
I'm a lawyer.
Okay.
But I'm not a very brief, Mr. Frederick Nail myself, but I believe the
Just
list
speak
says-
into the mic, sir.
I'm sorry. I believe the list says variances. We're only here to reestablish a non-conforming use of it, so I believe we're here for a special exception, if I'm not mistaken.
Has the use been,
I went by the application that was submitted, so.
the application says it was empty for over a year, so.
That is
then
correct.
It needs a variance then.
Okay, well, then we're here for a variance. I just wasn't sure between the variance. So if you want to tell them what you're trying to establish with 902 South Webster?
We're trying to reestablish the deli. It's been a deli since 1978. And what happened was the tenant moved out, my sister was sick, and I had some physical problems and health problems, and I just didn't get over there to do it. And now it's all done. The inspectors were over and told us what they wanted to do, and we did it. So now all we have to do is get a variance, I guess.
I was just going to say, that he did fill out an application for an occupancy permit, and the city did send over an EIC to inspect it, and it was passed.
And I put it towards the board. I had pictures of the actual deli. I was going to outside deli, but it's also on the corners, the four corners is also located there. The beauty shop across the catty corner. And the catty corner there before we're down on.
What did you say was granted?
I'm sorry?
What did you say was given? Grant? I didn't hear it.
Well, as part of the occupancy permit, we send the inspectors over to inspect the property. It's kind of, he should have waited until this was done first, but
Okay, 'cause-
nonetheless, it was done that way, and the inspectors inspected it, and it came out with,
Once the occupancy permit is given, isn't that?
once the zoning is, the normal process is zoning first, then the application for the occupancy.
He has no parking at all on that.
Pardon?
No parking.
Well, that's,
Parking. Would you have a parking?
I have pictures of the interior, where it's actually part of going to be an in-out business.
it is a takeout business according to the application.
Takeout only? Okay.
Correct. And that's primarily the way it's been since the 70s. You're right, there are no parking, and there's no way to get parking.
Get another one? Okay. I got it.
But anyway, it did pass the inspection process, And depending on the outcome of the zoning case, it could get the occupancy permit as soon as tomorrow. Well, I'm sorry, once the 30 days expire.
Is there anyone in opposition of this, guys? Okay.
Did you have any plans for parking for even for employees or anything like that?
There's no plans for parking, but it's been there for 40 years. Now the Casanova is closed, and all that parking that I used to use for the Casanova is empty.
Yeah, there's also, there's a garage in the back, is that right?
On the side.
On the, yeah.
left of it.
Yeah, so how many employees do you plan on having? Yourself?
2 employees.
So that building is completely empty, the Casanova? Is that what you called it? The place that was across the street?
Yeah.
Across the street.
The Casanova has upstairs apartments, but in the back of the Casanova, there's 4 buildings. There's all off-street parking in the back of the Casanova.
Okay. Well, there's nobody to oppose it, so.
Well,
And you said it's gonna be a
it
walk.
says on your application here, deli and restaurant. You're
Gat
gonna have to
restaurant.
lose that restaurant.
Well, it's almost a takeout restaurant.
Yeah, it's a takeout restaurant. That's all it's ever been.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Gattens?
Yes.
Ms. Newcomb?
Yes.
Mr. Palmetessa?
Yes.
Yes.
Chair.
Sorry.
Yes, per Mr. O'Neill.
With the vote 5-0, you've been granted.
Agenda item number 4, Joseph Pica, 2116 Pittston Avenue. Just a minute, Jim.
Good evening, and I'm not here about a baseball field tonight. Attorney Tony Loma, I represent Mr. Pica and ACP Realty LLC. Mr. Pica purchased the building at a repository sale from the Lackawanna County Tax Office back in August, September of 2016. Prior to that, the house or building was a 3-unit apartment. And the prior owner, was deeded to the prior owner in 2012 from his dad. In January 30th of 2015, there's 3 parts. There's the top floor, I guess second floor, first floor, and basement. The basement apartment was condemned by the city on around January 30th of 2015, and then the whole house was condemned, looks like it was July 8th of 2015, and Mr. Sweeney can verify and correct any of those dates. On September 28, 2015, the house was exposed for public sale, but there was no bids by the tax office. And then my client had put his bid in, and I said he closed on the purchase of the building in September 2nd, 2016, the deed was recorded. We believe that the house, the building, was never abandoned. It may not have been used over a period of 12 months, but the Scranton zoning ordinance has a presumption of abandonment, and I guess Mr. Penatar mentioned that you need a variance, but under 806E3, it looks like maybe a special exception could be the way to go. But either way, Dan, I don't know if you're familiar with the Latrobe Speedway case, which I'm sure you are. The Commonwealth Court, you guys are probably tired of hearing the Commonwealth Court being quoted today, that the burden of the party asserting abandonment to prove both that a landowner intended to abandon the use and that the use was actually abandoned. And this burden does not switch to the landowner to disapprove discontinuance even when presumption is made. But more importantly, the Commonwealth Court in Latrobe stated that where non-use occurs because of events beyond the owner's or occupant's control, such as financial difficulties, there is no actual abandonment. And this is what happened with the prior owner. Obviously, he was in financial difficulty, went to tax sale the property. And immediately after it was available for purchase, my client purchased it and wants to continue the three-family use that was been there, that goes back, pre-existing condition. To show that the use wasn't abandoned, if I may approach, these are pictures of the water meter and the electric meter. And there's 3 meters, 3 electric meters, 3 water meters. So there was no intent to abandon, because if it was, there would have been structural changes, the meters would have been pulled, there would have been 1 meter. However, if you find that there still was abandonment, we're looking for the variance or special exception. It meets all the requirements. The house is a total of, the building's a total of over 4,300 square feet. The top apartment's 1,450 square feet. The middle apartment is 1,650 square feet. And the basement apartment is over 1,200 square feet. I mean, you're talking almost 4,400 square feet for a single-family home, which would be a pretty big home. So it was always, again, we believe always a 3 apartment structure, and the square footage shows that there's ample square footage. And my client, who we testifying, has agreed to put in parking in the back. There's 5 spots, as you see on the map. He has done some work on excavating to make room, and we have pictures of the inside of the building and where parking's going. And Mr. Pika,
I couldn't find the parking. Did you swear?
you have to go by the 20th ward, where the 20th ward is, to get in the back there, because actually the 20th ward has their parking back there also.
So at the bottom of the cliff is the parking?
If you come around the map, I'll show you.
Show him that picture.
Yeah,
But I'm saying, is it,
here's his building, here's the 20th ward, and you gotta come through the alley here. This is the 20th ward's parking. His is in his, my client's is in his back, right here.
Are you gonna, Joe, are you gonna answer any questions?
This is right here.
Are you gonna answer any questions?
Sure, if you have any questions, absolutely.
Can we ask him some questions?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was just trying to show him on the map.
I saw where it was, that's why I wanted to ask him some questions about it, yeah.
I don't understand what that's saying.
Can I swear him in?
Swear him in, Al, please.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
State your name and address, please.
Joseph Pika, 1415 East Elm Street.
So Joe, is this parking at the bottom of the ravine?
If you go past the 20th ward, that's Curse Court. It's not used much except to access the additional 20th ward parking and to get to the back of this particular property, 2116. The ravine comes in on the upper side of Curse Court. Over the years, it appears that people dumped where Curse Court would have went through, and it made an embankment. Some of that ran over to this land. But the 20th ward side, it's still accessible.
So how will your tenants get from that parking lot? You're saying they have to come all the way up to the 20th ward, then?
No, there's a path from the parking in the back. They can walk right up to the rear of the property.
That was my question, that was my question that I had, because I know I'm a tenant, it's a pretty big hill, I got groceries. You're not allowed to park on Pittston Avenue over there, is that right? It's no parking?
The whole front. There's Poppy's Pizza.
What? Yeah, I was talking and then he started yapping, so.
You're good.
I was just concerned about the walk, the big steep hill in the winter, because right now it was full of snow.
Yeah.
Right, when I went there, I was able to get there, but
Yeah, from the back parking.
it was covered in snow, so I worry about the big
Yeah.
hill and the snow.
The walkway is actually dug out wide enough for a vehicle. It's over 8 foot, the walkway from the parking.
So if somebody wanted to drive up, drop some groceries off, and then
They
back
could
down?
drive right up to the back door if they would
Okay,
wish.
well, that was, I'm sure that maybe a
is-
railing would be,
We could
help.
certainly do that.
A railing, yeah. Did you see, any of you see it?
see.
You weren't able to get there, but a rail, would you think a railing would be a?
Well, it's just the beginning stages of
Well, yes, but it's
anything.
the hill is not gonna get any less steep.
You're gonna rent that apartment, you're gonna see where you're gonna walk from.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's your option if you wanna rent that apartment after that point. That's the only thing I could think of.
What apartment?
If you're gonna rent that apartment that's in that house, you're gonna see where the parking is. and
Oh, yes, you're gonna
then
decide, yes.
You're gonna make that decision whether
Right,
you wanna make
gotcha.
that walk or not.
Which is why I suggested maybe a railing and some nice landscaping.
As you can see, Mr. Pica has painted and cleaned up the inside of the place. And I think it was the inspectors were in there, and there was something minor with the battery on the smoke detector or something.
Yeah, NEIC was already through there. I have their slip for the occupancy.
You did more than, Mr. Pickup, you did more than paint it, right? I'm looking at pictures, I mean, the place looks really good.
We cleaned it. There was the
So, I
prior
mean,
situation.
it was left in that condition as a condemned house?
The prior situation wasn't very sanitary. A lot of cleaning. It took us actually a month to clean out.
No, I mean, your cabinets look like they're new and stuff. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I'm just saying that if I had a condemned property, and it was left that way, I'd be happy.
Those cabinets are painted.
I thought the same
New-
thing. I said, no,
newly
you
painted.
put new cat, he said, no, we painted them.
Yeah, paint.
I thought the same.
And it was in very, like, cleaning was most of it. The painting
Is
was
this
mired.
the apartment that
compared-
the chickens were in?
Yes, the chickens, the goat, the hay.
This
Yes.
is the chicken house.
That's why the
I
basement.
commend you to get it to this point, because it was bad. It was the talk of the office.
Yes, I've heard, and if you've seen it in the beginning stages, those pictures look a million times better. As Mr. Sweeney's seen it in the beginning, it was loaded with hay.
For the pigeons, or for the
Chickens.
chickens.
and-
Well, at least they put hay down.
Yeah, at least they.
Yeah, right next to a
There was a goat
Right.
too, I think.
open
Yes,
fire
which
stove.
prevented a fire hazard, I believe, the hay.
It was a beauty.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Gattens?
Yes.
Ms. Newcomb?
Yes?
Mr. Palmetessa?
Yes.
Chairman O'Neill?
Yes. With a vote 5-0, been granted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, glad I hope you're feeling better next time. Want to take these? I have extra. Yeah.
I was sick last week.
Really? So you were glad we didn't go last
The
long?
last thing I came, it always happens.
And I felt bad that we screwed the meeting up. I screwed the meeting up, but again, I don't control what the government does and what they're doing over in Mosul. I can take it. He did. I give him credit.